It's not
So I
on
think
the historic register.
I just
Yeah,
want to make sure you didn't approve something that gets in the
I
ringer.
believe the live streaming is set,
That's
the
all.
meeting is recording, you're good to go.
we're good to go. All right, we'll call this regular meeting of the Board of Finance to order. It is 7:19 on Wednesday, February 3rd. I'll do a quick roll call. Myself, Tim O'Brien is here, joined by Glenn Frischman and David Motherway in the meeting room. Mike Feuerbach, are you on?
I am here.
Lynn Young?
here.
Bob Stachin?
Here.
And Deb Norman is not going to be able to make it tonight. Unfortunately, she had a little accident at home, minor thing with, but needed a couple stitches, so she'll be getting a finger checked out, so she won't be on. We also have Jim Sullivan on and Jill Senior taking notes for us, as well as others. Okay, so we've called it to order. First item of business is comments from the public. If a resident who's dialed in from a phone line wants to make a comment, you press *3 on your phone to raise your hand. Then Roger, our moderator, will hover over the hand and press unmute, and then you need to press *6 to speak. So once again, you start with *3. That raises your hand. Roger will let you know you're unmuted, then press *6, and you may make a comment. At this point, are there any comments from the public? I'll ask again, are there any comments from the public? Roger, is there any public?
There's 3 people that are dialed in, just waiting to see if they raise their hands.
Okay. Once again, press *3 if you want to raise your hand to make a comment. Do a final call for comments from the public. Okay, hearing no live comments from the public, we did receive a letter from the Lantern Hill Valley Association, and we will attach the letter because it came to Director Sullivan. We'll attach the letter in its entirety to the minutes, but it was for the association for the talking about the Whitford Brook Bridge at the Stonington Ledyard Town Line is a shared resource and plays a vital role in southeastern Connecticut's larger community. They're asking for they're urging the town of Stonington to work with the town of Ledyard toward the goal of finding a long-term solution to the Whitford Brook Lantern Hill Road Bridge. The bridge's societal importance to the over 150 homes in the Lantern Hill Valley area for the EMS support, medical needs shopping is important to them. The association also has an ecological concern, and Save the Sound has started the process and received funding for the first stage. This spring, they'll begin design and plans phase of nature-like Fishway. Senator Ostin is also including funding for this bridge as part of an infrastructure package. She is presenting to the Connecticut State to apply for funds available via the Federal CARES Act. So that is a synopsis of the letter we all received. Like I said, the letter will be recorded in the minutes in its entirety. All right. Next item of business is previous minutes. I just got to wake my computer up, which can't recognize me with a mask on. There we go. So we have draft minutes from the January 6, 2021 meeting. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second, Lynn.
Motion Glenn, second Lynn. I will remind everyone, first off, if you're not talking, to please mute yourself. And secondly, if you are, to please identify yourself so that it's easy for Jill to identify who's doing what. We have a motion from Glenn, a second from Lynn. Any comments on the agenda, or on the minutes rather, or changes?
It's Mike, just a quick thanks to Jill. I mean, they're very comprehensive and look good to me. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
I agree. Hearing no other comments, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please state your name and say that you're opposed. Motion unanimously passes. I will remind us in the meeting room, there's about a second delay from what you guys say on the internet to when we hear it. So bear with us as we try and make sure we sort this all out and get everybody heard, okay? New business, additional appropriations. We've had none since the last meeting, correct, Jim?
That's correct.
So no, nothing changed there from prior line. Next item of business is line item transfer. First item of business is request from the town engineer to transfer $71,266.95 from the Coogan Boulevard and North Stonington Bridge SIP project account to a new SIP account for bridge engineering and design work. Can I get a motion to approve that transfer?
Motion.
Motion, David Motherway. Can I get a second?
Second. Glenn Frischman.
Second from Mr. Frischman. Discussion. Chris, are you on?
Yes, Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you now. Go ahead.
Good evening, Chris Greenlaw, Town Engineer. As outlined in the memo to the Board of Finance, in the summary, this transfer to the Bridge Replacement and Structural Improvement Fund will facilitate the analysis and design necessary to forecast the timeline and funding to either replace, repair bridge infrastructure. Furthermore, I'd like to say, Mr. Chair, this fund allows us to initiate both the design and construction of larger structural repairs to protect the bridge infrastructure. What we're trying to do is similar to the roadway accounts in DPW. We'll have an account for minor repairs under the operation and maintenance account, and we'd like to have an account for major maintenance repairs or structural interim repairs under the CIP. This account allows us to be proactive to support our bridge preservation program that we're trying to build. One little asterisk, additionally, this fund may be utilized to assist with activities associated with, for instance, the Lantern Hill Bridge, and that's to be discussed later in the agenda. Is there any questions?
Yeah, I have one. It's Lynn. The rehab to the North Stonington Bridge, explain that. I thought we had put this thing to rest here. How did it get to be $34,000?
Yes, currently there's, I believe, Jim can correct me, I think currently in the account there's $64,000 or so. And what we'd like to do, what we're proposing is to help with the initiation of this account is to transfer in $34,000. The reason for the remaining $30,000 to be left behind is because we're entertaining an initiative to come up with a fire line assembly that's probably going to be brought forth to you folks probably next month. And currently we're looking for a solution with the bridge being out to provide a fire line access to cross the brook. And that's something forthcoming. Therefore, that's why I'm proposing to leave $30,000 in the account.
Well, isn't that the cart before the horse? Shouldn't we hear what that proposal is and why and all that? In other words, before we leave anything beyond what we had already decided we were going to do. I don't care if we leave it in the account, but I don't want it to be considered a foregone conclusion. We're going to do anything.
Lynn, if I may, this is Jim Sullivan.
Yeah. Hey, Jim.
This $64,000, this is money that's left over from previous appropriations for the North Stonington rehab.
No, I know, I understand. So I know we're taking some of it out and leaving some of it in, but what I'm trying to say is I understand there's something coming down the pike, but the decision to leave, some of it in to cover that, I don't want to be misinterpreted as, we're going to do it.
But it doesn't. What we're doing, we're taking some money from it.
I understand, Jim.
What money is left? What money is left is not earmarked to be spent. It can be withdrawn for other reasons.
I understand. It would have been fine, except I just got that explanation on the North Stonington Bridge. Otherwise, I wouldn't have said anything. So, as to why it's being left in there. Never mind.
Okay.
Maybe just to add, I think, and Chris, feel free to jump in here. I think we were just giving some scenarios, examples of the type of thing it could be used for, but we would certainly come back to discuss with you guys before making further appropriations, but just to give a sense of what it could be used for. I think kind of in line with what Chris was first saying, similar to the road repairs, that we found an area in our budget that was currently missing essentially, and we'd like to have this new dedicated line item for the future.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, the Board of Finance would have to approve a detailed proposal when we get it.
Well, okay. I think people are getting confused here. We have 60 some odd $1,000 in the account right now, okay, for the rehab of the North Stonington Bridge. They are proposing to take $34,515.95 out of that because the rehab that we're looking at doing is not going to be the $64,000, and repurposing that. That's what they're asking to do into this bridge and engineering fund. So it is reducing it, but not down to $0 or $1. And that rehab would have to still come back through the Board of Finance, but it is money that was already appropriated in past budgets that has not been expended, and they want to divert some of that monies, which we know we will not be expending, and then come back with a further proposal.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it's clear that we're not going to spend funds without a detailed proposal.
Yep. No, I think that's why Chris was saying that they're looking at coming back at the next meeting to give a detailed proposal. However, it will be much less than what is already in that line item, so there's no sense leaving everything there. Let's take some of it out and repurpose it.
Yeah, okay, so my whole thing was just, I thought we put this to bed 100 years ago. It just keeps coming back. That's all I was trying to say. So.
And Lynn, just to clarify on just because it will come back again, this is about that kind of temporary solution with the dry hydrant that we had discussed to address that kind of critical concern. So that's why this is coming back up. That was one of the key concerns from Chief Richards was the lack of access to a hydrant. So this was actually Tim's great creative solution idea for a proposal, and now Chris Greenlaw and Groton are working together to try and see if we might find something to address that concern from the fire department.
Okay.
And what they're also trying to do is work with Groton about the cost. That's why it's unknown at this point what's exactly going to be encumbered. So it is a work in progress that I know our DPW and our engineers are working with Groton's to figure out exactly what works and what doesn't. So, but to make sure we offer a degree of protection to the residents there that are not Stonington residents. I know that, but they're there and serviced by the Mystic Fire Department, Old Mystic Fire Department. Other questions about this line item transfer? No, hearing none. All in favor of approving the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Please state your name and that you're opposed. None. That motion unanimously passes. All right, next we have a request from Director of Finance to transfer $10,000 from the Coastal Resiliency SIP account to the Climate Mitigation Adaptation and Mitigation SIP account. Can I get a motion to approve that request?
Mike, so move.
Motion, Mike Farbach. Do I have a second?
Bob Satchin, second.
Second, motion, Mike, second, Bob. Director Sullivan, you want to step us through? I mean, it's basically a name change, right?
Yeah, exactly. For 1 year to the next, the name and the SIP kind of morphed, and this is just to put everything in one account. So we're all talking about the same thing instead of talking about climate change and coastal resiliency. This is all making it all climate change, adaptation, and mitigation.
Any questions for Director Sullivan?
Just to confirm it, and it's 10,000 is all that's going to be in this account. There's nothing coming from any other sources at the present time.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Please state your name and that you're opposed. Motion unanimously passes. All right, next I would ask for a motion to adjust the agenda. And I'd ask for a motion that for the presentations and discussions, we reverse the order of them. We'll do the Lantern Hill Bridge first, and then the coastal resiliency second. Could I get a motion for that?
So,
Motion from Glenn, second from Dave Motherway. Any discussion on that? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Please state your name and that you're opposed. Okay, we've rearranged the agenda to just flip-flop those two. We have no bid waiver requests, so we don't need to go through those. Next item on the agenda is discussion regarding the Lantern Hill Bridge. Do you want to, hang on one second.
Just want to state that we just now got the live stream functioning, so those people who are going to be watching this, you can go to our YouTube channel in the next few days to watch the first 20 minutes or so of the meeting, but we're picking up live.
Okay. So hopefully everyone heard that. You can go to the YouTube channel to see the live, or the entirety of the meeting. There were some IT issues, so we were not streaming live, but we've got it resolved, so now it is live. But the YouTube will have everything in its entirety. Now, the item on the agenda we're on is discussion regarding the Lantern Hill Bridge. I'll start off with the first thing, in that I had a conversation with our first select woman, Danielle, and with the mayor of Ledyard, Fred Allen. Very positive conversation discussing the bridge and what Ledyard pressures and finances are under, and what they're looking at going forward and what we're looking at going forward. As you remember, we had discussed at the last meeting, looking at something that was basically $50,000 for each town to share to make a fix for now, and then look at a longer-term solution down the road. Mayor Allen has worked with Senator Osteen to request the funds, as was noted in the letter from the association, and that's in the legislature now to look at getting those funds for a total repair based on some of the CARES Act and some of the situations that are encompassed there. If we can get that, it's kind of a no-brainer. So we're kind of working in two things in tandem right now. One is our solution so we don't close the bridge, and one is to see if they can get through the CARES Act some of the larger funding levels so that we can move on a replacement or total repair of the bridge, I should say. And then Danielle or Chris, did you have items you wish to address on this one?
Yeah, no, Tim, thank you. Chris, I'll let you take the lead, and I'm happy to fill in, but we just wanted to share an update that we just got actually on Monday. Again, just wanting to be fully transparent and keep you guys up to date on everything, all the bridges. So thanks, Chris and Tim.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, Chris again. Chris Greenlaw, Town Engineer. I wanted to offer an update or a status with regard to the Lantern Hill Bridge. As indicated, Ledyard will review the estimated costs and hopefully enter an MOU. With regard to the cost specifically, we had WMC consultant engineers provide options for structural interim repairs, by which a $100,000 construction option was agreed upon. And this is a very important note because at the time of their presentation, they did not include their engineering costs with the construction costs. So the engineer's opinion of probable cost is still $100,000 for the construction repair. So the estimate as provided by the consultant was only construction costs. Therefore, we've worked with the consultant to develop an engineering cost, now bringing the estimated total to $137,450, which would mean $68,750 respectively for each town. And that would include design and engineering, also to include construction admin and inspection during the project. The design costs roughly $19,000, $20,000, but the inspection and admin is a large number, given the nature of the type of repair to the scour wall. It's not a typical repair where you're looking at everything above the bridge. This is some underwater work and items below a footing. So I think it's a conservative number, but at the same time, it's a number that wasn't presented at the last meeting for design. So I put together an email and outlined these costs just recently to Danielle, I believe Monday or so, and I'm sure that'll be forwarded to Ledyard. But just full disclosure, that email, the engineer's estimate for design services is something that we can certainly bring forth to the next meeting for the committee for the next meeting. As I alluded to earlier, perhaps the solution to the engineering cost, the additional $18,750, could be charged to the bridge improvement account, and that's why I alluded to that earlier in our discussion. So I wanted to offer that to you. Additional notes, as a reminder, as the chairman indicated, the Lantern Hill Bridge is recommended for closure if no action is taken. So therefore, if the funding and the MOUs come to fruition, then perhaps we'll propose a bid waiver at the next Board of Finance meeting subsequently, so that we can accelerate the schedule to meet the 6-month deadline. So as things fall into place, that's something that I would expect that we would propose to help accelerate the schedule to meet targets. And also WMC, our consultant, would assist in developing 2 to 3 proposals from bridge contractors. So that is my update at this time. I wish I had better news as to the design and engineering costs, but that's something we can provide to you fully transparent for the next meeting or before.
Thank you, Chris. Are there any questions?
Yeah, hey, Tim, it's Lynn. Chris, I do have some questions. So how do we know what the construction is going to cost if we don't know what it is we're going to do yet? You said something about 3 engineering options.
Yeah, the engineers, this engineer, I believe they stated 75–80% of their work is bridges and bridge-like work, support work. And what they do is they put together an opinion of probable cost based on some of the means guides and estimates from similar work. So they have an idea of the construction cost, and that's how they did that. Then in addition to that, the 3 options they proposed to you for interim structural repairs were all construction costs. So depending on the avenue of structural cost, they will then provide their design services as far as plan preparation and a bid package, permitting, bidding, construction admin and inspection, so on and so forth. But that is how they contrive those numbers.
Okay, but is there any reason to think this thing can balloon to $400,000 when they poke a hole in concrete or something like that?
That's a good question, because when I received the engineering estimate, I spoke with the president because it's a large number comparative to the construction. And as I stated earlier, it's working underneath the footing of a bridge where there's water and mud and not a comprehensive mapping. It's not as if, you know, the top of the bridge, you can do non-destructive testing and you can do analysis. You're looking at, you know, many of the elements, and but underneath the bridge is going to require more of their participation. So that is why that construction inspection and admin number is so much higher.
Okay, well, I'm not even so much focused on that as I am worried that what happens when they go to look at this stuff, that, you know, all of a sudden to get 6 years, it's a $500,000 problem or something else. And we're kind of bound to it in the sense that we've already plunked down a bunch of cash to get that far. That's really what I'm asking.
Understood. They told me that one of the reasons for having a full-time inspector or designer would be that as they run into these hurdles, they can kind of design on the fly and make adjustments, shutting down the job and analyzing, making adjustments and moving forward. So that was the discussion we had on that.
Okay. But this wouldn't be a GMP contract, right?
Not that I know of. When you say GMP specifically?
Guaranteed maximum price?
I don't have that guarantee, no.
Yeah, okay. All right. And this buys us how many years, remind me? Oh, sorry, I'm almost done.
Say it again, Lynn, we couldn't hear.
I'm sorry, it buys us how many years? If all goes well?
This was 5 to 10 years, I believe they stated.
Okay.
They stated, if I remember looking at their presentation, it was an estimate of 5 to 10 years that it would be almost quote unquote guaranteed, but they're expecting it would last the full 10 years. But until you get into it, you can't give any kind of form of a guarantee.
And the way their plan was written, they would also be telling us what would be roughly the effort at 10 years to
Correct.
get us the next.
Correct. Mr. Frischman.
I just have a question. For my own clarity, Chris, 137,400 is construction alone and another 18,750.
No, it was 100,000 was the construction alone. The 137,450 roughly was the construction and engineering combined.
Plus.
So that when you drop that in half, that gets you to roughly $68,750 for each town, of which we had already put 50,000 in for that because we knew the numbers that were the estimate, but we thought that included engineering. They did not. So that's the difference that Chris is outlining now, is the engineering and the administration costs are roughly $18,750 for this project.
That's the clarity I need.
Perfect.
Tim, it's Mike. Can I ask a question?
Yep, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so Chris, thanks. I mean, that's helpful to understand the kind of the 5 to 10 year option. But Tim had mentioned in the beginning that Senator Austin was also pursuing, the possibility of reimbursement for a larger, more permanent option. Do you have any more detail on that situation, or how are these two going to play out in parallel? Is there a point in time at which, if we don't have an answer on the Senator Austin option, we have to pull the trigger on the shorter term option, or do you have any more information?
I can actually address that one. In our conversation between Mayor Allen, Danielle, and myself, that was brought up as there becomes a time critical that we've got to do. Senator Austin is putting money in for the full upgrade and replacement option is what that's looking at. That would be a much larger project, take a lot longer time. That, if it gets hung up in the legislature, we're going to get to that 6-month mark where the bridge has got to be shut down. So there's going to be kind of I don't want to say a dual path going forward, that at some point we're going to have to jump off and just say, okay, it doesn't look probable, or it does, and we're going to have to take our best educated guess at which way we move forward. But right now we're trying to run them in parallel so that we don't run up against our time crunch that we then have to close the bridge, and the effort to reopen it to perform the $100,000 fix would be kind of Herculean compared to if we start it now. So right now we're running parallel paths and seeing what kind of temperature we get out of the legislature, and Mayor Allen and First Select Woman Cheeseborough are both keeping in constant contact, and then we'll be updating us as we go. And the worst thing is, to me, the best thing is that comes through and then we don't do anything and don't spend the SIP money that we have there, and it can go back to our general fund.
And Tim, do you have any just sense from Senator Austin? I mean, is this shooting for the moon in terms of the odds of getting this, or is it 50-50? Or I am kind of curious, even the angle we're using to get CARES money reimbursed. I mean, I just think about coronavirus relief fund. So
yeah,
we're going to put a mask on the fire truck.
It actually, yeah. Well, it actually ties in with some of the ecological concerns that they have there, and
Okay.
and so that was the tie-in, and some of the I don't want to say endangered species, but some of the species that have been found there to be critical, that may be then opening a path for this that we didn't anticipate. So both
Are you talking about the
Mayor Allen,
alewives? Oh, sorry, Tim.
Mayor Allen was going to go back to Senator Austin and see what the kind of temperature was, and I have not heard back from that. And it'd probably be a little too quick and too early in the state part of this to figure out how quick that is. But they're optimistic, but you know, the reality of the state is such that I don't know we ought to be overly optimistic at that happening.
Yeah, if we're getting CARES funding for all wives, there's a little bit too much CARES funding around.
Yeah, it's access to medical facilities is what the bridge does, I think, is why it's under CARES.
Yeah, there was because of the EMT and but they were also looking for monies out of, I think, Fish and Wildlife too. It was coming out of a myriad of places. They were trying to get creative to find funding so that Ledyard and Stonington, you know, could keep the bridge open and utilize some of these things. So.
Yeah, and I think in that letter that we got from the member of the public, there was a request that it's, you know, if we can support Senator Austin in her endeavors here. Is there anything that we should be doing or
I don't at this point have that information, but I am sure our esteemed first select woman will be letting us know as this moves forward, and have notices that will go out to everyone and we, you know, as this moves forward, we'll keep you all informed. But at this point, I don't know that there's anything right now because, you know, it's the first swipe at everything. So we're not sure where it'll all go. Danielle, you can tell me if I'm any different or wrong. Now that I can see you again.
No, perfect. You summed it perfectly.
That's how she got elected, using all those words. Yeah. Any other questions on this? Because as of right now, it's just an update. It is not an ask or a lift of us by any means. So it's just keeping everyone informed as things move along. Nothing else? All right, Chris, thanks for your work on this. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, next item on the agenda is I get to turn it over to Danielle for it says brief presentation in the agenda. I just wanted to make sure I pointed out. And she helped write that, about her Coastal Resiliency Fund proposal.
I will try and keep it brief since I know last month's meeting was quite long and we have all the budget hearings in front of us. My computer connection was very poor, so I'm now calling in on a phone. Just want to check you guys can hear me okay.
You're good.
Okay, so I can't actually share the presentation live time, but you should have all gotten it. I'll public. It should be linked to the agenda on the town page. And again, at this point, so if anyone on the board wants to talk more detail about this one-to-one or have another meeting on this, I'm happy to, as I'm sure the other select women would be. And moreover, anyone in the public who's listening, we're happy to talk in more detail. But really, in summary, what we wanted to do about was the possibility for Stonington to create a coastal resiliency fund similar to what Branford did. Jim Sullivan and I had a great call with the Branford First Selectmen and their Director of Finance. They shared a lot of great insights with us. And essentially, the reason they had the state and their state senator about creating this new basically tool for municipalities to look at this long-term risk was they're another coastal town and they see this as a potential negative for both, you know, human health, environment, economic impacts. The range is wide. So when we started thinking about it for Stonington, you know, we went back to 2017 coastal resiliency plan, and I know you can poke at all these numbers, but basically based on the tax assessors estimates, we have over 4,000 properties that could be at risk, which are worth about 1.8 billion. And if you look further out to 2050, there's almost 2 billion that could be at risk. So then we started thinking about that. Seems really quite big and depressing. So what can we do? And so that's where it came up. We were thinking, this isn't just about planning for the future, such as an OPEB plan or a pension or retirement fund, where we're planning for the future. Because I understand we have a lot of very pressing capital needs right now. But I think it is also a tool about thinking about people who want to stay living in Stonington, who might want to move to Stonington. We are a coastal town, and I think we need to show that we are being proactive and planning and starting to invest for the future. This is where this idea came up. Also, just to touch on and further research, we did see actually, I think it was not even a year ago, a study from a group of real estate investors and developers came out, and they interviewed people like BlackRock, Credit Suisse, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Moody's, et cetera. And beyond what we keep hearing, how credit rating agencies are looking at municipalities for how they're looking at climate risk. Now more and more real estate investors are starting to look at how municipalities are looking at and how prepared they are for climate risks. Full disclosure, they said most of them don't have their kind of method. We're still in early days, but I think we need to get ahead of it. The other thing that was interesting, just first time ever, Forbes magazine included climate risk, the top 25 list of most desirable retirement towns. So I think we're in the early days, but this is going to continue to increase, and just ensuring that is attractive for residents and visitors and potential new residents. I think this is a unique opportunity. So essentially, we look at Stonington has a good history thanks to current and former members of the Board of Finance and others that we have our we fund our liabilities, whether it's pension, self-insurance, OPEB. We also need to planning and being fiscally prudent when it comes to this long-term resiliency. So basically what the Public Act passed that basically authorizes municipalities to establish a climate change and coastal resiliency reserve fund, where in some case, for example, I would be coming back to you guys likely in May or June once Jim has established how much is left in our reserve fund, hopefully, to talk about what we could put aside potentially to create this fund for the first time for us. So what Brantford did was they put $1 million from the reserve fund, and then they've committed, again, pending how much they have left in the reserve fund each year, to then add in $300,000 every year. The other kind of interesting thing about what the state allowed with this act is I think it's up to 50% can be invested in equities. So there's also an angle, having our funding kind of earn more interest over the long term. The other thing that the act does, just to get ahead of any questions, is it gives, it's a first selectman, board of selectmen, and board of finance a lot of authority over the fund. So you don't have to worry that, if some major other catastrophe happens, you can, through a joint, decision, into that fund if needed. But it's also there and protected, maybe potential shorter term needs, but that when you think of them long-term needs, they're not quite critical. Before taking any questions, is basically, that proposal. I wanted to put this in everyone's mind now because I know we're entering budget season, and just to be thinking about that. So if at the end of June last year, we had 3.5 million of our 2 months operating. There's nothing, we don't know what it'll be next June, but if we do have something similar to that amount of our operating, I would love to see us be potentially the second town in Connecticut to a leader on long-term liability risk and planning. I'll stop there. If you guys have questions now, or again, like I said, happy to do another talk with the group or one-on-one in the future.
I have a question.
Identify yourself.
David Motherway, I have a question. Are you looking at this as an additive for the 2021 budget and beyond, or are you looking at, in essence, looking at the different departments and expecting that they're going to reduce their budget and find the funding from within the existing budget.
So David, great question. And to clarify, so this would be separate from the budget process, and we would only be looking at what we have in excess of our 2 months operating. So if after our 2 months operating, we don't have any excess funds, I won't be coming back sadly, but hopefully we will. So it'll be once the budget process is done. And it's a separate fund, so it won't be a line item in the budget. It's a separate fund that will be kind of separately managed. And Jim Sullivan can come in at all if you want to, Jim, too.
Essentially, what the selectman is saying that we would just, if we have, say we have $5 million above 2 months operating, from my lips to God's ears, the Board of Finance would actually take an act of the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and I think town meeting and say we can take $1 million of that and create a new fund, take the money out of the general fund reserve and put it into a separate fund, almost like a trust that would be established just for coastal resiliency issues.
So Jim, this is Lynn. So in effect, the excess we have over the 2 months operating is doing that anyway, right? That's what it's there for, is for some sort of a catastrophe, right? Except now we lose some of the fungibility of those assets. And when we turn based on that legislation, we gain the ability to deploy those funds into a market, which is, as I would hope everyone understands, a mixed bag with lay people at the helm of that. And so I'm just questioning why are we laughing? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. I was just thinking that we should have already invested it in GameStop, but never mind. Continue on.
Well, yeah, but that's kind of my point, because in order to really sensibly go into an equities market, you're going to need 20-year time horizon. So if we ever had to invade it and whatnot for some other, hurricane or something that happened, it's not free money anymore because you're taking a lot of market risk. It's one thing to maybe ladder up some CDs for 3 years, something along those lines, and earn an extremely modest return, but a safe return that you would then give up the breakage fee if that's all it was. But more to the point, I don't really understand what the point is. We have a top-rated bond rating. We have all these excess funds because we've carefully managed it, and all we would be doing in this case is transferring it into another fund that we lose control over. So somebody has to explain this to me. Maybe you, Danielle.
No, and I summary, but I think because I promise I keep it brief, but we can have longer, obviously more detailed conversations, and also happy to set up a call with the director of finance in Brantford, who was obviously very passionate and insightful about this. But why it resonated with me is I think sometimes we all see there's these short-term pressures to, they say, okay, above 2 months operating, you have $3 million sitting there. Why aren't we spending it on X or Y? And while X or Y might be important right now, it's not essential. And if we could see 30 years in the future and what our liabilities might look like, there's no way a future, 30 years down the line, Board of Finance would approve what we might be spending now with that excess. So I think it's a way to remind us that we do know we're going to have some serious infrastructure that's going to need improvements 20, 30 years down the line. And why aren't we starting to save for that now? Why aren't we allocating money to the side so we're sure that future generations have that? And again, whether it's a bridge, since we've been talking about bridges so much, bridges that are going to be washed out and need to be replaced, whether it's town-owned buildings that are going to need investments or living shorelines that we want to be creating, or new technologies we want to be deploying in Stonington. Hopefully they're here in 20, 30 years. But I think it's more about being sure we are starting to put money aside now and not getting pressured into spending our fund reserve on other things that, again, might be important now but aren't critical with a long-term lens.
Well, my only challenge to that would be we could sock away, $1 million a year for the next 30 years and, you wouldn't even save one neighborhood. So, so there's that element. Secondly, we're going to need things like, new sewer plants and whatnot, which will be hardened, which will be spending an awful lot of bonded money on stuff like that. So, I'm going to have to be really persuaded.
If I could jump in with two questions. First, just Bob Stachin. Lynn, I know Senator Cohen has put in an amendment to this statute in this current legislature, which permits the state treasurer to invest municipal funds that are put aside for this, which would create more investment opportunities as far as that. And also the last section of the statute says that it can be discontinued at any time after recommendation of the chief. So if it does build up and then, you know, another project came up, I mean, there is flexibility in there. Somewhat my concern with it though is the only part of the statute that I see that deals with sort of how this money is spent is section E on it, and it talks about that any recommendation for using the funds would be by the chief elected office, the budget making authority of the municipality, which would be the Board of Finance. But then it also says the approval of the legislative body of such municipality. So I guess my question is, I mean, if we put this money in there, does that mean every time you want to use it, there has to be some sort of referendum or vote on it? Or has Branford had any experience with that?
I don't believe they've spent any of it because they do want to hold it off. But yeah, it would be a town meeting to expend the funds.
Okay. Yeah, so there's that. So you're taking away the fungibility of the money for sure. You're taking away the authority of the Board of Finance. And Bob, not for nothing, but the last people in the world I would give a nickel to run is the state.
Absolutely.
It creates more investment options because you're coming at it from a larger source. So, and if you maintain control of it, you know, I mean, obviously, bottom line is you just want to find out where you're going to get the best return. I know in the slides they talk about an 8.4% return. I don't know if that's possible, but the bottom line is we look and see where we can get the best return on it. And that opens up another opportunity. So, I mean, that's down the line as far as how that investment is handled. But I think I would be curious, Danielle, if something like this was implemented, whether you would, you know, specifically how what the plan would be, where these funds would be put as far as, you know, to get that return. Again, I think that's a kind of an optimistic return, the 8.4, but
it also takes zero account.
But how that would be. What's that?
I'm sorry, Bob. Everybody's cutting in and out of me. My internet connection is terrible. Yeah, can you hear me?
I can now.
A bad internet connection after the storm. Now you can. Yeah, but Bob, the bigger question is, does the municipality want to be in the investing business? Because I'm going to tell you right now, you know, we're looking at the biggest equity asset bubble we've ever seen, and it will explode, probably around the time the next hurricane comes and swamps a sewer plant. You know, those are big issues that need to be, you know, addressed before, you know, we do any of this, because right now we have safe funds, and the other way to do this is to simply accrue a larger excess fund balance and have it available for whatever we might need, the next, you know, building that falls into the river, whatever it is. But we're kind of doing it. Our bond rating is what it is.
Len, but I would also say that, I mean, I'm not sure that
Hang on, I'm gonna jump. It's a good discussion, but we got other members who are trying to jump in and say stuff too here. So let me get to Mr. Frischman as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Put me in the column with Member Young. I think it's eminently bad policy for us to tie up our assets and let alone trust the state treasurer to invest. Their record of performance on state assets has not been great. I definitely think this is not a good idea, and I would vote against it.
Well, Len, can I be clear and answer that? Hold on a second. I'm not voting for or against it. I'm simply saying that there are massive considerations to be had here. This is not something to do in any way, shape, or form without a deep dive into consequences.
Yeah,
it sounds good, looks good. Branford's doing it.
Just to clarify, also we're in February, and that's why I brought this up now, and there's no action required. It's to start a dialogue and conversation.
Yeah. So it's Mike. If I can just jump in. So yeah, I mean, I think it's an intriguing concept, and yeah, I appreciate that it was at least brought forward for some discussion. And Danielle just said, I mean, I think there's ample time to investigate and look at the pros and cons. And yeah, I do think there are multiple strategies to be considered here. As Lynn, you're saying, we could just build up fund balance, but it would be interesting to kind of compare that to setting aside something in a more restricted fund as being considered here, and what are the pros and cons of doing that? And what I'm getting at is, are there implications from a bond rating review perspective? Which if we squeeze down the undesignated amount, perhaps that's a negative from a bond rating review perspective. On the other hand, I know that there have been some prior fiscal cycles where the state has looked at the size of undesignated fund balances, across the municipalities and used that as a criteria for assessing ECS funding or other state aid. And so this actually could be a strategy to take down the undesignated fund balance by putting money in a separate account, and that might help boost us, in terms of some state aid. So I think there's a lot still here to look at. I don't think we should shut it down, or I think it just let's do the work to understand all the pros and cons.
Yeah, I agree with you. We're not getting much in the way of state funding anymore anyway, but I don't disagree with any of that. I'm just saying this could have very serious consequences for, a lot of different reasons, and it just really needs to be considered extremely carefully. That's all I would say about it. And like a very, very deep, hard dive with a whole lot of modeling and a whole lot of consequential stuff and whatnot. That's something like this is an epic change to the way we do business.
Other questions or comments from board members? Nope. All right. Thank you, Danielle. And glad to hear everything came back COVID-free.
Thank you. Good. Yeah, I'm happy to follow up and talk more over the next couple months.
Sounds good. All right. Next item on the agenda is correspondence. We read the letter that we got in. I read the letter we got in already. Jim or Jill, do we have any more correspondence?
No, that was it. The letter from Lantern Hill Association.
Okay. Liaison reports, SIP liaison, Lynn.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. I don't have one because I had a family emergency and I couldn't make that meeting.
Danielle is just saying it's still a work in progress. Good.
Well, yeah, we had our Board of Selectmen SIP meeting last week. We cut, I think, about 850,000 out, regraded a few things. We know you guys still have a heavy lift and are happy to work together on that.
And Tim, this is Jim. I'm going to endeavor to have the budget books delivered to you, Board of Finance members, on Friday.
This coming Friday?
This coming Friday.
Okay, great. Lynn, WPCA?
There's nothing really any different. I mean, we've discovered in the course of the diversion and stuff a lot more, shall we say, equipment in perilous states than we had originally anticipated. So the $10 million bond is coming in handy, as as we expected.
Yeah. Mr. Frischman, Board of Ed.
I had a direct and real-time conversation with Chairman Tedisco regarding the Board of Ed's proposed budget increase. I advised him that 9% would be not acceptable. He said he was going to go back to the board and give them further input.
Other liaison reports. Are there any other liaisons?
So it's Mike. just wanted to let folks know that I heard from Linda Camilli, our tax collector, just today. If you recall, when I updated you last month, indicated that January would be a big month for us to see how the collections are coming in, given the next installment of the tax bills were due. So I just wanted to share with you what I learned from her. We are slightly behind on a percentage basis versus this point in time last year. So they're collected, I think it's around 96% thus far, whereas at this point in time last year, we were closer to 97%, so about a 1 percentage point difference. But Linda indicated that two of our top 20 taxpayers had sent in their tax payments yet, and she's fully expecting them this week. So it may be by the end of this week that we're actually in a similar places to where we were last year. She got 39 applications for deferral. You had to proactively apply for that. So those folks have some additional time, to pay their taxes. But the good news is, all in all, trending reasonably well considering the current circumstances. Probably the biggest gap or biggest concern at the moment is the personal property tax collections, and that's really coming primarily from like small businesses and having to pay taxes on their personal property, things like equipment, etc. So that is a bit behind, but that's obviously a much smaller proportion of the tax collection versus the real estate. So that's the latest on the tax collection side.
Perfect. Thanks, Mike. Any other liaison reports? Nope. I will say one thing before we adjourn. Jill, we start our budget hearing, our budget meetings, the end of this month, the end of February. Jill, could you recirculate the budget dates, the latest version, to make sure all of the members have the current one in front of them for us, please?
Yep, I can do that.
Excellent. Tomorrow's fine. It doesn't have to be tonight, but sometime by the end of the week, that'd be great.
Yep, no problem. I'll send it out tomorrow.
Great, thank you.
Are we doing those in the hybrid model?
More info to follow. Roger and I were talking about that this evening beforehand. He and Chris Williston, because most every one of those meetings is at district office right now. And Roger and Chris are going to get together, do some test runs to see how it goes, and stay tuned. We'll get back to you on that one.
Okay, no problem.
There will be a hybrid option, okay? I am assuming that we will not have a meeting where everyone will be in attendance during these presentations. And we have some ideas that we kind of threw around here earlier about getting the presentations ahead of time, so anyone who is virtual has them on their computer ahead of time. But it's still things that we are working out. But, last budget cycle, we were able to get through it with most everything with me in person somewhere. And this one, it looks like the presentations, which we were all able to do in person last time, are not going to be fully in person this time. So it's just more of a unique challenge going forward here. But Roger and Chris are working on it, and I'm working with Roger to figure that out. So we'll get more information in the next week or so.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Yep. Any other comments, concerns from board members? No? Hearing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion, Mr. Frischman, second from Mr. Motherway, and from Robert's rules, seeing no more business before this board, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Have a good evening.
Night, Denny.
Hey, Tim, before you go, can you tell me, Tim?
Yep.
Tim, it's Lynn. How do you raise your hand on this thing? How do you, on this
There should be by the participants, I think. Hang on. Hang on, let's stop live streaming and then we can do a, don't hang up, Lynn.
I think it's where the
If you
Well,
hit participants and find yourself,
Yeah, I'm looking there. There used to be a
at the
hand.
bottom,
It's
there's
gone.
in mine at the bottom, there's a button for chat or raise hand.
We are done live streaming, but we're still live meetings.
I just, okay.
Yeah, so everyone knows we're still live in the meeting, but we are not live streaming. So we're good. And it's just us who are left in the meeting. So what do you see at the bottom, Lynn?
All I see,
And are you on your phone or are you on the computer?